Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Soul Talk podcast. I trust your hearts and souls have been inspired by the recent episodes. We've had some great ones over the last few weeks, and they just keep getting better. Today, I think, is going to be a little different, unique for Soul Talk. This is the first time we're having a spiritual channel medium on the Soul Talk podcast. He's considered one of the foremost spiritual channels in the world today. Author, medium. He's authored best-selling books, I Am the Word, the Book of Love and Creation, the Book of Knowing and Worth, the Book of Mastery, the Book of Truth, the Book of Freedom. And I know he has a new book coming out, which looking forward to dive into that as well. Welcome to the Soul Talk podcast, Paul Selig. Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Just heard so many amazing things about you and diving into your book, which is really inspiring and insightful. And so you're a spiritual channel and medium, and I think I would love to know, especially for those listening in who may not know what that is and may have no idea. What on earth is a spiritual channel? So could you kind of explain what is a spiritual medium and channel? What do you do? How does that work? And, how did you become one?
Sure. Well, it's nothing that I ever planned on becoming. I wasn't somebody who necessarily put a lot of stock in channeling. I think I was a bit of a skeptic. But I seem to operate as a radio. It's a form of clairaudience. And I'm an intermediary between sort of this level of consciousness, this shared reality that we operate through, and the level that the guides that I work with operate. So that's a form of mediumship, although I'm also known as a medium for the living. I have this odd ability to step into other people that are living, still have a body, and I can sort of become them and hear from them, hear for them. It's an odd thing. But the channeling's most of what I do. And what it really is taking dictation. It's not much more glamorous than that. All of the books that you introduced when you gave my introduction were dictated through me. So I sit in a chair, I close my eyes, I hear one phrase repeated incessantly. And then when I give that phrase voice, the rest of the teaching or the book, whatever it may be, tumbles out on top of it. And the transcriptions of those sessions are recorded. They're recorded and then transcribed, and the unedited transcripts become the books. The last 3 books, maybe 3.5 books, were all done in front of audiences, in front of students, and live workshops and live streams and events. So really, what I am is a clairaudient who has this odd ability to hear this sort of collective of teachers that seem to be bringing through a rather orderly and sequential teaching on the evolution of consciousness and the embodiment of what they call the true self, or the innate divine self that they say is who we all truly are.
Got it. And so you say you didn't really plan to become a medium. I don't know if anyone can actually plan to become one. You said you're even a little skeptical. So I'm curious, how did this happen? Did it just happen to you one day?
Well, it's a bit of both, truthfully. I was raised an atheist, so I didn't go looking for a spiritual life until it sort of became essential that I look for something more, which was when I was 25. I was about a year out of Yale, and it looked like I was doing very well professionally. And in fact, I was. I just wasn't in very good shape. And I began to look for something more, really out of sheer necessity. And I ended up having an experience shortly thereafter. I opened up to the possibility that there might be something more. There was this event people were calling the harmonic convergence. I heard people were going to be waking up. This was 1987. I was 25, and I went up to the roof of the building that I lived in, and I said, well, pretty much if there is a God, I'd like to be woken up. And I went up there with some belief that could happen, because I kept thinking, well, if there is a God or something like a God, why would it want to say no? And I had an experience of energy that may well have been, I'll never know, self-induced. People said later it sounded like a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, but it was an experience of energy moving through my body and out through the top of my head. And I began seeing little lights around people after that. And I didn't have a context for any of this stuff, given how I was raised, and a friend of mine encouraged me to go see an energy healer to get a context, and I did, and then I got the courage to study myself, and I was volunteering at a center in New York City. It was the height of the AIDS epidemic, and there were these centers popping up to provide alternative support to people who basically had no help coming at all from Western medicine in those days. And I found that when I had my hands on people's bodies, I started to hear things for them, and that was how the clairaudience really began. And it was for them. I was hearing things for them. So if I had my hand on your chest and I heard the name Rosalie, I'd say, "Who's Rosalie?" And you'd say, "Well, that's my mother and my wife or my daughter." And as it kept getting confirmed, I began to trust it more. And I started a little group that met in my apartment. And it met for 18 years. I think I took a couple of years off once when I got fed up with it all. But 18 years, I sat once a week with whoever would show up, usually sometimes 3 people, sometimes 25. And I would do this work. There was energy that came with the work, and that's what I was so interested in, not the information. I had another career. I was, on the faculty of NYU for 25 years. I was running a graduate program at a small college in Vermont, Goddard College, during this. And I wasn't really looking to be known for the channeling. In fact, for the most part, I was keeping it pretty quiet, especially at NYU. And but at one point in 2008, after I'd finally quit smoking, the guides that I work with began lecturing through me. And all I really knew was that I was talking more. But it wasn't until they said, the guide said in a group, Paul's not going to believe what's coming through him until he sees it written down, that I began recording and transcribing. And as I began to do that, they became willing, and very shortly after that, they began dictating books. And the first book took 2 weeks of dictation. It was called I Am the Word, and now there are 6 others in print, and there's an 8th one that's since been dictated. So these things come at the pace of about once a year. And now about usually over about 30 days worth of sessions, spread out a bit because I do them in front of a convened group of students, wherever they may be. But that's it, and that's how it happened, and that's what I do now. I left my academic life about 4 years ago, and I travel and I do this work, and the books keep coming, and I have a practice where I help people, with the guides or by tuning into the people in their lives. I'm not a medium for the dead. I don't talk to your Aunt Agnes or your uncle, but if your uncle's living, across town and you're arguing, I can probably hear him pretty well and be of service in that way. So that's what I do.